Hello and welcome back to the Just Follow Joy podcast. My name's Ariana and I'm a human design teacher and guide. And today we are going to do a quick little episode. I say quick little, but I actually don't know how long this will be. I have no concept of that because I don't have a script. I am just freestyling it today. But that's all right. It should be pretty concise because I already did an Instagram live on this topic and I wanted to redo it because, oh my God, the first time I record something without a script, this is why I usually need scripts, but I just didn't want to write one today. But the first time I record, I will always leave an important piece that ties everything together out. So I wanted to redo this, and also because I can't figure out how to download my Instagram lives off Instagram, guys. I swear to God, they say online that there's an option to download. It never gives me one. If you have an answer to this, email me. Stat. Help. SOS. But anyway, we can just re-record it here, and that's fine. But anyway, on to today's topic, which is honestly more of a riff based on something that I realized recently, but I think is probably super applicable and helpful to most people. So we're going to talk about the G center and being yourself. So how you express yourself, your identity, how you're meant to do that, and what's important to know depending on, whether it's defined or undefined. So if you don't know anything about the G center in human design, very briefly, this center has to do with the energy of identity, purpose, love, self-love, and direction. And to be clear, when we're talking about love here, this is honestly referring to like universal love, like the frequency or vibration of love, because in human design, the belief is that like what holds us together as people, like literally what holds our consciousness and our material bodies together is the vibration of love. And that's also what pulls us towards life and pulls life towards us. So, because this is the magnetic monopole in the G center. So it's a one-way magnet. You pull life towards you and life pulls you towards it. But anyway, so this also connects to the fact that it's like why it's so important to love yourself for who you really are, because you can tap into universal love and, then you're in alignment with the universe and yada, yada, yada. But anyway, so what brings me to this today is a realization I had recently. So if we take a step back from human design really quick, right now when I'm recording this, we are experiencing a very potent energy around owning what you want, owning your desires, clarifying them, and going for them. And this is because when I'm recording this today, this is the evening of February 23rd, a Sunday, Mars just went direct. And that alone is going to be a big shift when it comes to our ambition, going for what we want, getting what we want, things like that, because that's everything that Mars has to do with. Mars also has to do with like fighting, but that's something different. So not only that, but all of the planets are going direct right now, which does not happen all the time. And so a lot of us will feel, or many of us will feel like things that have been blocking us, things that have been blocking us from owning what we want or going for what we want or just making them happen, they've disappeared, dissolved, or they are lifting, or we just feel more capable in dealing with them. And this is going to last. I don't know how long Mars is going direct. I'm not an astrologer, guys, but I know that all of this together, these two combined events in the cosmos, this is going to be going on until the 28th. So for the next 5 days. But what all of this means is right now, the energy is very supportive, not just for claiming and owning and figuring out what you want, but actually going for it, or getting the gears going when it's come to manifesting it. Maybe you actually do manifest it in this period. And this could be the smaller things, or this could, be the bigger things that you may not necessarily manifest in full right now, but are, your bigger dreams that you would like to make moves towards. So if there were ever a time to be honest about what you want to see in your life, what you want to experience in life, it would be now. Don't hold yourself back. And many of us, I wouldn't be surprised, are probably feeling less held back at this point. I know that I certainly have been. So the reason I bring this up, this will come full circle, I promise, but The reason I bring this up is it's no surprise that during this time I've been really drawn to a manifestation teacher named Amanda Francis. You may have heard of her. She is very well known. And I had heard of her before, but no one had really recommended her to me until I was talking to Tara about something. And something she said just made me think, you know what? I should go check out Amanda's stuff. So I did. I went to her YouTube channel, immediately was like, I love this woman. I'm in love with her teachings and she's so authentic and real and, very service oriented. And I just love her gig here. She's all about, if you don't know Amanda Francis, she's all about owning what you actually want. She's like the queen of desire and saying like, it doesn't matter if it's realistic because who wants realistic results? We want unrealistic results. We want to see our desires manifest. We want to know that we deserve those and own those and just fucking go for it, dude. And she usually talks to women, but I mean, everything she says applies to people of any gender identity. And so, I highly recommend her if you're into that kind of stuff. I really, really like her. She feels like a walking permission slip, honestly, to just go for what you want. But anyway, so it was either in her book or another thing I was watching where it became very clear to me that something I needed to address were the things I was afraid of happening or why I felt I may not deserve certain things that I want. Because I have been becoming very, very clear on what I want recently. I've been motivated to figure out what that is. And when I wrote them, when I script those things out, when I visualize, when I, and I'm not a huge visualizer, but I've been doing that lately too. But when I really get into it, like I know what it is and it's juicy and it's good. And I've let myself just dream at a higher level than ever before. And it's been feeling amazing. I've been feeling so expansive. Obviously, I feel like I can do anything. And the thing about this is I realized that. And then I realized that I have been holding myself back from being the person who has those things, being the person who shows up in that way, being the person who has manifested that stuff, because I have been so afraid of the labels that people would put on me and what that would mean, because they might just see one side of me that shows up with that thing and then say, this is you are this way, and that is bad. And first off, before I explain what I mean by that, just the fact that at this point in my life I did that made me want to slap myself across the face. And I said this in the Instagram live, but luckily my desire and general preference not to be slapped overrode that, and instead I am recording this. I think this is more helpful for everyone than 5-starring myself. I couldn't really believe that. I was just like, I was so unconscious. I didn't realize it had been happening. It just really came to the forefront through this work and through this transit that's coming up. But what I mean by all of this is I have some typical desires of a 29-year-old woman. Like, I want to feel beautiful. I want to have luxurious experiences at times. I want, some things that I want, some material things, right? I don't just aspire to be spiritually aligned all the time. I want to live a life where I can go out with my friends and be like, we look fucking awesome, and, throw back some really awesome cocktails and live this life that, it doesn't always look like it has a ton of substance from the outside. And I've realized that I've really held myself back from doing that because that is not something that people take seriously in the spiritual community. If I were to show up that way, there would be certain people, people who have never seen me before online, or people who have been following me before but haven't seen that side of me, who could go, oh, well, that's disappointing, Ariana. You're not real. You're fake. You're superficial. You're superficial for even wanting these things. You're superficial for wanting to be hot. If you were spiritual, you wouldn't care about that, which I think is just such bullshit, but whatever. And so I have really hidden that part of myself and done my best to show up with the side of myself that does exist and is real, but is only one part of myself, which is very eloquent, very thoughtful, introspective, intelligent, and doesn't focus on silly, frivolous little things like a cute miniskirt. So, like things like Botox, Oh, did I out myself that I've used Botox? And if that sounds ridiculous, I don't think it is personally. I mean, I think it is a silly thing to hold myself back because of, but I've seen a lot of people in the spiritual community, like people who are teachers and practitioners and service providers, or people who want to become leaders or even are leaders and deserve to be. I've seen those people, especially women, get shat on if their expression doesn't fit the bill of what someone is traditionally supposed to be like or act like or look like or be interested in as, a spiritual person. And this is a topic that has been covered so many times by so many other people. I'm not saying anything new here, but it wasn't just, it's not that I was just afraid of like strangers or possible clients not seeing me in this, as somebody who has depth, because I was afraid that they would think that I wasn't deep if they happened to see, a picture of me in a bikini or something on just the Just Follow Joy Instagram. It wasn't just that. Like, there are people in the human design community who I really respect and really like, who I've heard speak with quite a bit of disdain towards certain people who show up as what certain sides of me show up as. And I didn't want to lose their respect, and I didn't want to lose them because I really like them. And I'm going to circle back to this a little bit later. But all of those were these reasons why I've been holding back on these, base human desires of mine and showing up as a person who dresses a certain way, does certain things, is interested in certain things. And so how does this tie into the G Center then, besides the fact that we're talking about identity? So I am somebody who has what's called an undefined G Center. So this is if you have your G Center, which is the rhombus in the middle of your chart, colored in white or left uncolored. And if you have an undefined G Center like I do, that means that you are someone who's here to show up with a very chameleonic and fluid and pretty much ever-changing identity. And the reason for that is because we don't create a consistent sense of self or identity on our own. Instead, we are mirrors to the identity energy or the energy of the G Center overall that we pick up from our environment. So from the people that we are around, or, depending on the transits, those affect how we show up as well in terms of our identity. But because of that, we're not built to show up consistently as the same people each day, which means that depending on, when you meet me, which video you watch online, which email you read from me, you're kind of like getting that from a different person. And I've even looked at my own pieces of content and been like, this looks like a completely different girl talking about this, or this email like reads as if it was written by a completely different person than the last email I read that I had written. So it's kind of crazy, right? But that's exactly how we're supposed to show up. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, we don't need to have this one cohesive, consistent identity that we always show up with. No one does. It's just that if you have a defined G Center, you are somebody who creates your own fixed identity. You know who you are, and that doesn't adapt to where you are. So it's not as fluid and flexible as it is for someone like me. Like, if you and I were in a room full of people, I would be picking up on all those people's identities, and you would be one of the people who's emanating the identity energy that I'm picking up on. So with this being said, one thing that can happen for people who have undefined G centers is people can see one side of you and then assume, oh, that's you. And, that could be good, that could be bad, whatever, because what they see in you is probably themselves, honestly. And if they like themselves, then they'll probably like you. But the problem here is when they expect you to keep showing up as that. And when you don't, then that can be a little disorienting or even disappointing for them, because they're like, what? That's not the real you. Why aren't you being the real you? Why aren't you being the person I know you to be? Why are you being fake? Whatever. Anything that can result from thinking that when you see one side of a person, you're seeing all of them. That can be the result here. On top of that, I am what's known as a 5-line profile. So I am a 5-1 heretic investigator profile, and that's awesome. I love being a 5-1. However, one thing about having a 5-line in your profile is that your aura is it's easier to project on than other people's auras would be. So to be clear, every human projects onto every other human. It's just, everyone does it. It's a part of the human experience. So no one escapes what we call the projection field or field of projections. Everyone lives in it. However, 5-lines tend to be a little bit more aware of it because so many people project onto our murky, foggy, misty auras, whatever it is they need to see right now. And that's not inherently bad. That's how the 5-line aura is supposed to work because, we're here to come in and solve problems and things. So we need people to see us how they need to see us so we can play the role that they need us to play. I'm getting beyond myself. But anyway, so with this, people can project onto you images and expectations that are even less based in reality than they would be for other people. So as a 5-line, if you have this profile, you may notice that people say oh, you're so this, or I feel like I already know you. And you're like, I've known you for 7 minutes, right? And I don't know where you came up with that description of me, but that's not me that you're talking about. So we tend to be a little bit more aware of that because we have lived it for our entire lives. And the thing about this is that with my undefined G center and me showing up in all these different ways, that means that people can put these expectations on me pretty quickly. And again, no one escapes the expectations and projections from others. So I'm not saying that, I'm this special victim, not at all. But people do tend to project an image onto me, project an expectation. And when I haven't always lived up to that in the past, even if I didn't promise to do that, or with my undefined G center, I show up as an entirely different person because that's how I'm built to. I have had experiences where people have felt very disappointed about that, even though they didn't really realize what was going on. They're just like, I don't like this side of you, right? Or they've even felt betrayed. They're like, why did you lie to me? And again, that's not super conscious. They just are not happy with something that I did because it doesn't line up with what they thought I was supposed to be. So as a result, I've noticed more and more that there are places, not that I've done this more and more, but I've noticed more and more that there are places where I really hold back my expression of the day or speaking how I want to speak or posting a picture of who I am and how I feel today, because that would turn people off because they only wanted to identify with one side of me. I was thinking about how angry people get at me when I swear in my emails and how afraid I've been at putting people off by swearing in my emails or swearing in my podcast, because I don't do that in every podcast and episode. And by the way, this is another place where it's each episode I can sound like a different person. Each email I can sound like a different person. So I've had people, I can tell they're really disappointed that I didn't show up in the way that they thought I was going to be showing up on my newsletter. And I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want to let people down. But more than that, I selfishly didn't want to be attacked. And I wanted to control what people thought of me. And so I wasn't showing my whole self. I wasn't embracing all of who I was because I was so afraid of alienating people who would say, this isn't who I thought you were. And I don't like this, so I'm leaving, or you're fake, But I don't want to make it sound like the only people who can be or feel persecuted for their identity would be people with undefined G centers, because that's absolutely not true. It's just for people with defined G centers, this experience would probably show up in a slightly different way. So for people with defined G centers, like I mentioned before, you have a fixed identity that does not adapt to the people around you. You are here to know who you are and be who you are and embrace that. And just you can't change it. It's just so solid and stable in you. And I used to be so jealous of people with defined G centers. And in a way I still am, because you guys have this more fixed sense of direction in life and fixed sense of purpose and fixed sense of self, which I've always been damn it. Every person with an undefined G center for the most part is who am I? I just want to find the one cohesive thing that I am. So I'm not constantly searching for it, until we realize that we don't need it. And it's fine to not have a cohesive identity. It's okay. But for people like you, the main thing to understand is that you're not meant to, and you can't really adapt to the people around you. And what can happen for the defined G center is that even though it is consistent for them, their identity, if they don't feel like it's right, or they've been conditioned to believe they should show up in a different way, they can't really do that. And so they might feel like there's something wrong with them. And in the unhealthy state of the G center, they will smush it down. They will try to be someone else. They'll never be very good at that because it's just not the way that, they work, and it will feel so unnatural and so shitty. And that is how they will feel like they're suppressing their authentic self. And it's so unfortunate because we need people with defined G centers to own who they are, because you, in some ways, give a sense of identity and give a sense of self and direction to people like me with undefined G centers. You kind of bring identities and different directions in life for me to taste and see which ones I like and try them on. And the only way that you can do that in a way that helps other people is if you actually own and embrace this in yourself first. So who you really are, who you show up in a way that makes you feel really good. What direction do you want to go in life? Honestly, what do you want in life? What are you drawn towards? What are you interested in? What are you pulled towards? Or what feels right and aligns with you as a person. Want and desire is a little bit more like sacral center or ego/heart center, but you get my drift here. And if you don't do that, what's so unfortunate is you will never experience the love, self or other, that comes along with being your authentic self. So people with divine G centers can be very afraid that if they show up as who they really are, no one will accept them and no one will love them. But the truth is that if you never show up as you authentically are, you'll never find those people. If you don't show up with this clean energy around this is who I am and I'm owning it because this is the only option I've got, this is the only me I've got, and that's obviously good enough, then you're just going to keep attracting situations where you have to wear a mask and you don't feel like you can show up with your true self. And it's gonna feel like shit, dude. And because the G center also has to do with direction, you'll probably feel lost in life. You don't know where you're going. Why am I here? I don't feel in alignment overall because the G center is the center of yourself. It's the center of everything. So there's that. And then also, I'll tell you that this energy that you're here to emanate outward for others to benefit from, that's going to be skewed. That is not going to show up at its highest level. And you are not going to be able to use it to help other people either, which you may not care about as much. But if you are somebody, especially maybe you're a business owner or something, and you want to believe that by being your true self, you can help others. Well, if you're not showing up as that and not believing that, then how are you ever going to help other people by being the real you? How are you ever going to make money by being the real you? Which is the dream, right? Doing things in a way that feels good, and authentic, whatever. And conversely, if you're like me and you have an undefined G center, part of our role is to mirror back the G center energy of other people so they can see themselves more clearly and love themselves more deeply and see themselves as who they authentically are so they can appreciate and embrace that. So if people like us are trying to cling to one consistent identity or find that for ourselves or make that up so that they don't seem inconsistent or upset people, then we can't help people with defined G centers. And we will all continually have these relationships where everyone's mad at each other for how they show up as people. And no one gets to be their authentic self, which is such absolute bullshit. So let's not fucking do this anymore. Shall we? Let's agree to take at least one step towards being our more authentic selves this year, in the year of our Lord 2025. You can take a small step, you can take a big step. Whatever it is you feel you need to do to show up as the authentic you were here to be, which is just what feels good to you. By the way, if you're I don't know who that is, it's what feels right and natural to you, your true expression, what frees you. So here's a little homework for you guys, nothing big. If you have an undefined G center, what I want you to ask yourself is where you're not allowing your identity to expand and diversify and be many different things. Where are you trying to force yourself to be consistent or cohesive or live like according to the identity of somebody that you have been in the past, just because you don't want to confuse people or upset other people, or because you're afraid that people will see just one side of you and not realize it's not the whole you, and not give you this opportunity to show up with all these different parts of you as a complete person. If you have a defined G center, on the other hand, what I want to ask you is, who do you want to be? Truly, who do you see yourself being in your ideal life? Because the thing about having a defined G center is that you generate this identity energy for yourself. And so you are already being pulled towards that ideal self. Like your body already knows what it is. So I just want you to trust that. And if you're like, oh, I don't know, write down what your ideal life is. And then I want you to write down who you would be as you're doing that. And you can use I am statements. Those tend to be really helpful for people with G centers. But that whole thing of like, who would you be if you had this thing? Or who would you be if you were at this point in your life? That stuff can really work well with people, for people with defined Gs. And if it doesn't, I just want you to ask yourself, like, where are you not really letting yourself just be you? Where do you feel like you have to smush that down? And also, who do you feel that way around? It's going to give you some really good information. So that's it for today. I hope this was helpful, you guys. I really just recorded this on the fly. And if you want to learn more about the G center, if you want to learn more about any of your centers actually, or any other part of your human design chart, your energy type, authority, profile, gates and channels, even your circuitry, which is in the gates and channels deep dive course, you can get all of that stuff in the Just Follow Joy course library. And if you want an ever-growing pool of resources on all different parts of human design and manifestation, even some stuff on gene keys and astrology, then come join us in the membership. We are waiting for you. The people inside who have been checking out the different classes and courses and guides and audios have really, really been loving it. And I'm so excited for you to check it out. I'll have links to both of these below. But otherwise, you rock. And I will talk to you next time.